All right, guys, I hope you can see this okay. So I'm here at my lean-to shelter, and it's hard to find a clear spot where the sun is even. Hopefully this will work. I know there's going to be some shadows on there. I apologize for that. But so I've made up this little chart, and we've talked about a simple way to take care of your problem knife. You buy a budget knife, you come home, it doesn't do what you want to do. You kind of want to give up on it. But I'm going to show you a few things to do and what you can do to correct that knife. Now, there's really a few different things. One, if you got a knife and you buy it and it has that bad of an edge, try to return it, try to send it back to who you bought it from and see if you can get one with a better edge. That'll save you some time, because this method I'm going to show you is going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to take quite a bit of practice, but it's going to be easy to do. And once you learn it, it's like riding a bike. With a knife sharpening, you can use a Sharpie and put the black on the edge so you can see what's going on. You can use angle guides. You can use angle rods to keep the angle right. You can do all that, and that works, and that's fine if you do it. Like I said, there's all different, infinite number of ways to take care of your knife. But what I want to concentrate is showing you an easy way. And it takes a little bit of skill and practice, but once you learn it, you'll have it, and you'll be glad you have it. It's like if you ride a bike with training wheels all the time, guess what? You will never be able to ride a two-wheel bike. You got to get those training wheels off, and you got to go for it. Eventually, you'll be able to do it. And this method will take some time of practice. It may take, 2 knives, it may take 5 knives, 10 knives, whatever. But once you get it, you'll be glad you have it. So the first thing you got to do with your problem knife is you got to understand what's wrong with it. Why isn't it cutting the way you want it to cut? And this is not a rule, but this is a good starting point. And these drawings are not of any particular type of grind. I'm not going to go over the different grinds and the different edges. What I want to show you with these pictures is what could be wrong with your edge and why it's not cutting. Most budget knives, more than 50% of the time, it's going to have some kind of an edge and grind problem. Sometimes even more expensive knives. You could get a $100, $150, $200 knives, and sometimes those can come with an edge and grind that's messed up. Not often, but it does happen. But if you're buying a budget knife, you're probably going to have some kind of a grind and edge angle problem that you have to correct. And this is going to take reprofiling, this is going to take some regrinding, but you can do that by hand. So let's say ideally, if you want to make those feather sticks and you want your knife to cut, and this is for outdoor scenarios, not really for cooking and food. This is basically covering outdoor style knives and outdoor tasks, okay? I think ideally, sorry about that. I think ideally, you want to have an edge angle of about 20 degrees. You can go a little bit more than 20 degrees. You can go a little bit less than 20 degrees. That's going to be your preference and what you like, how you want to do it. But this is just going to be a good reference for a starting point on what you want your edge to look like, okay? And once you get used to this and you start getting your edge down, you can figure out whether you like it a little less. Sometimes you can go down to 17. Sometimes you like it a little bit more, maybe 22, 23. If you go much more than 25 degrees, and I'm talking about that's the angle on each side, 20 degrees on this side and 20 degrees on that side for a total angle of 40 degrees. Okay, but I think you'll find that if you go over 25, you're going to start to have difficulty in making those fine cuts and those fine feathers and doing that fine work that you want to do. So this is just a baseline, okay? So what you want to do with your knife that you're having trouble with, the first thing you want to do is identify what's going wrong. You're going to have to examine your blade. And what I want you to do, here's my crude drawing of a knife, okay? This part of the knife I'm calling the flat. This section in here, this bigger white section in the middle, is the grind area, and then this fine section here on the edge is the edge, and that's what all these examples show. This is the edge, and the bottom part is some kind of a representation of a grind. It doesn't matter what the grind is. That's not going to be the point. I'm sticking to basically the edge and where it meets with the grind and how we're going to correct that, okay? That's what we're going to focus on. So what I want you to do is pick up your knife, turn it upside down, and you're going to look at it from this way, you know, like the knife is facing you in the eyes. You're going to look at it this way, and you're going to examine this edge from the tip all the way down to the end. Now move the knife around however you feel like you have to do it. That's up to you. So for an example, if you can see this knife, you're going to be holding it that way towards you. Move it around. The light is going to be reflecting on the edge, so on and so forth. You have to move it around, look down the edge. You can look at the tip this way. That'll tell you if it's unevenly ground on either end of the tip. And then you're going to move it down there and try to look down the entire length of that edge. So you're going to examine it, and you're going to begin to see what may be wrong with that edge and grind, okay? Now, in a perfect world, you want to see something like this. Even if you hold the knife up this way, this first picture is representative of looking at the tip this way. And if it's a 20-degree edge on both sides, the tip should look something like that. And then you can look at that knife all the way down, and you're looking to find that all the way down. Well, guess what? On your inexpensive knife, you're not going to find that, and that's going to be part of the problem. One of the first errors you'll see is that sometimes the edge is just too wide. Maybe it's 30 degrees on both sides, okay? If your edge is that wide, I don't care how many times you go through the knife sharpening process and you take these edges on your stone and you take them down and you're trying to make an apex, you're trying to make a point, bring those two sides together. Well, if you follow the rules of sharpening and you stay on this edge and you stay on this edge angle, you're going to grind it down, but you're going to end up with that same angle, and no matter how much you sharpen it, it's not going to do the feather sticking you want it to do, okay? This, even on a wide angle, this knife may be sharp, and you can get that sharp and you can cut paper, but because you've got such big shoulders, it's not going to cut objects, it's not going to shave wood and do your task the way you want it to, because these shoulders are going to get in the way. Now, a lot of times you'll see this happen towards the ricasso of the knife in this area, or you'll see this wide angle at the tip. Usually when someone sharpens a knife, especially a budget knife, in this area is where they get the best sharpening done. But it might get wider over here towards the ricasso or over here towards the tip. I like my knife to be, the edge to be the same all the way through. I like my tip to actually be sharp enough to cut. Some people like it a little bit wide to make the tip a little stronger. That's fine, that's up to you. But if you see this kind of an edge, it's like close to 30 degrees on both sides, and you're seeing that, that's going to be a big part of your problem. Here's another example. These two examples are non-symmetrical edges, and this happens all the time, okay? Now, sometimes you may want to make a non-symmetrical edge because of whether you're right-handed or left-handed, and what you're cutting and the task you're doing, you may like that. And we'll talk about that more later. I don't want to get into that too much, but for this purpose, if you have, and a lot of times you look down that edge, you look down that knife, and you're going to see that one side is ground at a different angle than the other side. And if it's this way and you're right-handed, look at this corner, look at this corner you got here, okay? With that hitting the edge of your work, you're never going to make contact with your work with this apex, okay? So again, if you just sharpen it and you find this edge and you sharpen along that edge and you find this edge and you sharpen along that edge, you're never going to improve the way this knife edge will make feather sticks, because you're not coming in contact with the wood on a small enough angle to be able to slice that wood off of there. So if you look down the edge and you see this, you've got some work to do. Here's another example. Sometimes one edge will come down lower than the opposite edge, okay? And this edge is high. This is going to require a lot of re-grinding or re-profiling. You're going to have to take this edge way back down here And then you're going to have to work on this edge a little bit to even it off to get back to what this looks like. So that's another problem that you may run into. Okay? This is the only one I drew the grind a little differently because I wanted to show you something that's common with hollow ground edges. Look at that. I spelled grind, G-R-I-N-G. I didn't put a D there. But anyways, so this represents a hollow ground edge, okay? This is this part of the knife right here, okay? Excuse my poor drawing, but this one represents one that is overground. You can see that the hollow grind starts to come back and it starts to widen again. On a lot of inexpensive knives, a lot of them are hollow ground. Why? Because that's a very inexpensive grind to put on there. It's not a bad grind, it's just inexpensive, so that makes it common for inexpensive knives. And the problem you end up with is you end up with two huge shoulders that you have to overcome, okay? And when you're trying to present that edge to your work, maybe your work comes down here, you're going to run into those shoulders and you're never going to be able to do that fine carving. You're never going to be able to get those nice feathers off. So what you would have to do here is regrind this. Again, stropping, honing, sharpening is not what you need to do. You can sharpen this. You'd have to sharpen this down quite a bit to get it down to this point to where it would work, but you'd lose a lot of knife. But you can correct that. You can reprofile it by taking off these corners, okay? And taking that down. I'm not going to get into all the different edges and grinds that there are right now, but one thing you'll find, and we'll talk about this more later, is that as you sharpen and reprofile and sharpen freehand, it's going to be impossible for you to make these perfect angles. You're not going to get a perfect V angle on your edge if that's what you want. That's when you may have to use some mechanical devices to help you keep that edge straight. But if you're freehanding it, you're going to end up with some kind of what we call a convex edge. In other words, this grind and this grind is going to be a little bit rounded. And that's actually a very good edge, and that's actually what I go for when I'm doing it by freehand. But we'll talk about more of that in another video. Right now, I just want to concentrate on trying to correct what's wrong with your knife. And that's what you're doing. Your knife doesn't need to be sharpened. It needs to be reprofiled or reground. You have to take care of these issues. If you don't take care of these grind problems, you're not going to have that outdoor knife that you want to make those fine feather sticks, okay? So I'm going to show you what are some of the pieces of equipment that I use. It's very simple, very easy. We'll talk about that next, and I'll show you some of the methods that I use to do it. I'll start to show you the skilled part of how to reprofile these kind of problem edges. Once you get that done and you work on sharpening after you take care of these edges and you're getting an apex and you learn how to do that, you're not going to do it by sight. When you ride a bike, you're not doing it by sight. When you take those training wheels off, you do it by feel. So this method I'm going to show you is a totally by feel method. You can feel for these shoulders, okay, to take these shoulders off. When you get down to the apex and the edge and you're working on that, you can feel for that edge. You don't need a device to keep an angle or anything like that. You're not going to need to put Sharpie marker on your edge so you can see what you're doing. I'm going to show you how to do that by feel and a little bit by sight to start off with, okay? So we'll get to that.